With that, when we're ready on the camera. Good evening and welcome to this, the Monday, July 25th meeting of the Livermore City Council. I now call the meeting to order. Prior to roll call, I'd like to make it clear that, for the record, this meeting is being conducted pursuant to California Government Code concerning video conferencing of meetings. Councilmember Lorene Turner is in South Africa at the Westin Cape Town and will be participating via video conferencing. In accordance with the Ralph M. Brown Act, this location has been identified in the notice and agenda for this meeting. Councilmember Turner, are you able to hear our proceedings on your end?
Yes.
Now I'd like to ask if any member of the council has not been able to clearly hear Councilmember Turner. We've all been able to hear her? Everyone nod? Okay. For the record, any vote taken during this video conference portion of the meeting will be taken by a roll call vote. Madam City Clerk, please conduct the roll call for attendance.
Councilmember Spadowski.
Present.
Councilmember Turner.
Here.
Councilmember Warner.
Here.
Vice Mayor Gary.
Present.
Mayor Marchand.
Here. Okay, very good. Thank you. If you'll please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Now have a special thing we get to do tonight. We have a proclamation, and I would like to present a proclamation of the City of Livermore honoring John Shirley. The mayor's. This is the mayor's special award for Livermore community service. And you know, anyone that knows past Mayor Shirley knows that he's extremely involved in the community. He still goes to almost as many meetings as I do. He's pretty much everywhere and has been a great inspiration for this community. And so tonight I would like to recognize his contributions and his community service. So whereas John Shirley was born in Santa Ana, California on December 8th, and whereas in March of 1943, John was drafted into the United States Army, where he served in the European theater during World War II. For most of the war, John was a platoon sergeant and was in 6 campaigns and 1 invasion. He was awarded the Silver Star, 2 Bronze Stars with Valor, and a Purple Heart. And John documented his military experience in the book, I Remember, Stories of a Combat Infantryman in World War II. And there's a fabulous part in the story where he probably holds the record for being the POW with the shortest term, held for the shortest period of time. So I'd recommend anybody have an opportunity to read the book and find out about that. And whereas at the end of his military service, John attended the University of California at Davis, and accepted into the first veterinary class, graduating in 1952. While at UC Davis, John met and married his wife, Helen. And whereas in 1954, John and Helen Shirley settled in Livermore, where they raised 5 children in the community of 6,500 residents. And John established the first veterinary practice to serve all creatures, great and small. And whereas Dr. Shirley served on the City Planning Commission, and in 1958 was elected to the Livermore City Council. John was reelected in 1962, serving a total of 8 years on the council, with 2 years as mayor. And whereas while serving on the Planning Commission and City Council, Dr. Shirley was a strong advocate for well-planned, smart growth, as we still are. John took part in an update to the general plan, the creation of Livermore's Civic Center, and the introduction of development fees for parks and sewer connections to provide quality housing, shopping, employment, recreational, and educational opportunities for Livermore residents. And whereas John Shirley continues to be actively engaged in local issues with the Chamber of Commerce, with the Rotary Club of Livermore, with the local arts community, and with World War II veterans organizations. And whereas Dr. Shirley is held in high esteem by this community as a soldier, a statesman, an author, and a humanitarian. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Livermore honors John Shirley for his selfless service to the Livermore community and recognizes his selection as recipient of the Mayor's Special Award for Livermore Community Service. Dr. Shirley. Ambassador to the podium, say a few words.
Say a word over there.
Sir, please.
Oh, thank you. Well, there's a... Oh, there it is. Not very big. Well, Mayor John and Councilman and staff and everybody, thank you so much for this award. I appreciate it very much. I have 3 of my veterinary friends over here that came to hear this. I hope they weren't disappointed. You know, as I started, I came to this town in '54 where there were 5,000 people, but a little over 5,000 people. And the town had a 1931 zoning ordinance, didn't have a general plan, didn't have a planning staff, didn't have a city manager, all these things. It was quite a unique time to bring this town from a cow town to the great, wonderful community it is right now. But some of the things I worked on was bringing water in and getting a new treatment plant for it out. Zone 7 started in the middle 50s, and they brought it. And then I was on the council and traded the rodeo grounds for the civic center, and that was quite a trick. It took a whole year, but to get 42 acres for the cost of our rodeo grounds, which was $250,000, that was a pretty good deal. And, you know, the 2 railroads ran through town, lots of conflicts with cars, and somebody in the Chamber of Commerce suggested that we bring the 2 railroads together and then we can get some underpasses. The state was paying 87% of the cost of those underpasses. So I chaired that committee it was right after I left the council, but we got the railroads to join either. It was to be a kind of a district where people vote by the amount of land and the benefit they get. And so it passed, and we planned the 4 underpasses, you know, connected P Street. That wasn't a cross, but an underpass there in South Livermore and Marietta, and then the overpass. And it was all set. But when it came time for the council the landowners were for it, but the city council turned it down. We had a parking lots downtown, 2 of them, and the assessment around those lots were a little high, and those people didn't want to pay it, and they got to the council, and the council said no. So 2 years later, Southern Pacific wanted to move their road to build that Safeway store and the hardware store, and we let them do that, but then we submitted the bond issue again, and benefit district, and it passed this time. So then we have all these wonderful, and we have a lot of great separations in this town. This is an amazing town. So then that kind of, we bought out on Isabel, you know, options on the road. We bought, I don't know what it's called, but anyway, we tried to get that darn highway out of the downtown for 50 years, 45 years. Finally, some of you finally got that down about 10 years ago, I think. So once we got all that traffic, 4 lanes, 2 lanes in each direction and parallel parking, when you got all that out of town, then you guys have done such a wonderful job making our downtown just truly wonderful. So anyway, there was, you know, the golf course, we built that in the airport at the time. And so all those things happened. Springtown happened. The planners were against it. A lot of no-growth people were against it. But, you know, there's 18,000 people live north of 580 now, and it's a pretty nice area out there. But that was kind of controversial, too. So anyway, all these are the kind of things that I contended with, and it was really great. You know, we met every Monday night. We got $10 a month, and that for 8 years we did that. But it was a great pleasure. It's fun working with others for the common good, and I've done that for a long time. Thank you very much for this.
And you're still doing that. Thank you, Dr. Sterling. Thank you very much. Now we get to confirm the advisory body appointments and reappointments and administer the oath of office to the new members. This is one of the fun things that we also get to do, is the fact that we have so many people who are willing to step up and volunteer the most valuable thing that they have, and that's their time to contribute back to the community. So I'd like to invite up for the Beautification Committee, Paul Eldridge and Kathy Norfleet Peeler, the Library Board of Trustees, Jennifer Estridge and David Strubring, the Livermore Area Youth Advisory Commission, Yagulan Skrikumar and Alicia Zhang. And for the Livermore Area Youth Advisory Commission, reappointments, Piper Cook, Amy Malakse, Yesenia Medina, Monique Kihis, Ethan Shang, and Shannon Yan. And finally, the Livermore Area Recreation and Youth Advisory Commission adult member, John Kibbe. Oh, so we have a motion to accept the appointments and reappointments?
I'll move item 2.02.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Spadowski, seconded by Vice Mayor Gary. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay,
We need a
Mayor
roll
Mayor
call.
Marchand, I
Oh,
have
I'm
to
sorry,
do
we can't
every
roll call. Sorry.
call.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
here
would
we
have
go.
it, you know?
All righty. Councilmember Spadowski.
Aye.
Councilmember Turner.
Aye.
Councilmember Warner.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Gary.
Aye.
Mayor Marchand.
Aye.
Motion's unanimous. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. I'll go photo op here.
You solemnly swear. That I will support and defend. The Constitution of the United States. And the Constitution of the State of California. Against all enemies. Foreign and domestic. That I will bear true faith and allegiance. To the Constitution of the United States. And the Constitution of the State of California. That I take this obligation freely. Without any mental reservation. I'm about to enter. Very good. Thank you. That's what I was thinking.
Thank you very much. Moving on to Citizens Forum. These are items that are not on the council agenda. The City Council can neither deliberate nor take action on anything during the Citizens Forum. I ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. And we've got half a dozen cards here. So Gil Stratton, Jean King, and Nancy Bankhead. Mr. Stratton.
Yes.
You're on.
I'm Gil Stratton. I live here in Livermore, taxpayer, the whole bit. Anyway, I'm here because I want you guys to arrange for me to monitor. We've several meetings I've been to. We've had a lot of citizen input, and a lot of it's on paper, and I never know what happens to all those papers. So I would like to go to some place where they're reading them and collating them and get them down into something you guys can read. Can you arrange that?
You're looking at the panel here that can make that happen. So if you could contact Mr. Kiefer.
Mr. Kiefer, would you raise your hand, please? Thank you.
He'll give you his card, and he can make that happen. Thank you, Mr. Stratton. And just be assured that all the information that is being collected in the meetings, that is all being downloaded to the council. We do receive that information. So thank you.
And just as another bit of trivia related to the workshops, actually every one of those comment cards, every one of those sheets that was developed will actually be attached to your staff report. So your staff report coming out for your Planning Commission and Council workshop, which actually gets input from that community-wide workshop, will be a nice little stack there, and all of it's in there. And it'll actually be online as well. So in that particular case, there's just a tremendous amount of input that's scanned in the system.
Okay, so it'll arrive by hand truck later this week. Okay.
Or an internet.
Yes, okay, thank you. Jean King, Nancy Bankhead, and Joan Green.
Hi, good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff. I'm Jean King. I'm a member of the Board of Directors of the Livermore Amador Symphony Association, LASA, or LASA for short. And LASA manages the community Livermore Amador Symphony and also supports community interest in the musical arts, including school assemblies and free family concerts. And I come with a thank you and an invitation. I thank the Livermore Commission for the Arts for providing grants for 2 of our youth musical programs in Livermore. LASA has sponsored a fiddle club for 5 years at an elementary school in Livermore to give 4th and 5th graders an 8-week introduction to the violin or fiddle before enrollment is open for school orchestra. It is free for the students and provides instructor, music, and instruments. This year, it is at Maryland Avenue School. This is the 9th year that LASA has sponsored a summer youth orchestra for youth aged 11 through 21 with classes over 8 weeks at a minimal cost and culminating with a free public concert. Here's the invitation. On Saturday, August 6th at 8 p.m., the youth orchestra will give their free public concert at the First Presbyterian Church at 4th and L Streets. The 50-member youth orchestra, along with mentors, will give a really amazing concert. In the audience will be proud families of the members, LASA supporters, and members of the public. I invite the council and everyone to come to this community event and hear beautifully played music by the youth. Thank you.
Thank you, and again, congratulations and kudos to the Livermore Amador Symphony, the wonderful program that they put on of Peter and the Wolf that they put on in 3 schools, and then a free concert at the Bankhead as well for families in the downtown. So thank you for the great programming. Nancy Bankhead, Joan Green, and Dave McGuigan.
Hello, Nancy Bankhead. I was away on vacation last week, so I didn't get to go to your meeting about the downtown, so I come tonight. I'm not the only one that was on vacation. You're having these meetings in the summertime when people can't do it. I don't even know if 25% of the people of Livermore know what's going to happen on the Lucky Center until they start digging, because that's just the way the society is. But my opinions are you're building the same amount of parking spaces as there is now. It's not enough. We need more. I mean, you don't go downtown Friday and Saturday night because you can't find a parking spot now. And to build that many houses for that many people in that little area is not what's needed, in my opinion, in the downtown. We need more open space. We need, instead of an alley running through it, let's build some grass. Let's have something. I mean, there is nothing neater than to go down into Livermore on First Street and see the little kids playing in Lizzie Fountain. I mean, there's people that have mother's dates or kids' dates, I don't know, but they all go to the fountain and they have a blast. Where are they going to park? There's no place for them to park. I mean, there isn't a place now, but at least they can go to the Lucky Center and walk up. It isn't too far when you've got little kids. They're not building anything like that. And also, we need a sign across North Livermore that says you're entering Livermore. Let's get something that we're proud of that says we are Livermore. Pleasanton's got it. Dublin's got their weird signs, but you know it's Dublin. So what do we have? Thank you.
Thank you. And by the way, you can submit any comments that you might have to online, or you can go online, and Steve Stewart, I believe, is the contact person for that. So there's still opportunities. Joan Green,
Yes.
Dave McGuigan, Stephanie Bias.
Yes. I'm Joan Green. I don't come forward to speak very often, ever, but I
You
am
don't bite.
deeply concerned about the development downtown. I sort of second everything that Nancy Bankhead said, but I myself feel that housing in that location is going to be just overpowering, overwhelming to people that come from our shops and walk back into this jungle of four and 5-story housing with little ribbons of open space in between. It's just not going to be inviting, and I think we're going to miss a tremendous opportunity to build something very special if we allow for real open space, areas where people can mix and communicate with benches and maybe other fountains. And this is a one-time opportunity. And I just hate to see us ruin what we've already established downtown. It's wonderful. People come from all over to see us, and I'd like them to have one more draw, one more thing to bring them in and be proud of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Dave McGuigan, Stephanie Bias, and Mary Maycor.
David McGuigan, Ontario Drive. Continuing on. Now, the officer testified that he didn't engage me for the first 40 minutes of the investigation due to the initial confusion and other investigational duties. In reality, he had my signed statement in his hand at the time that he claims he just initiated his investigation of me. Now, let's consider the following. This was an accident between a single vehicle and a single pedestrian. The pedestrian never lost consciousness, and the worst injury was a broken nose. The vehicle sustained only minor damage to some light housings. There were 2 witnesses, one of whom saw everything, and the other who really didn't see anything. And the entire event was witnessed directly by the officer. I'm no expert, and I may be a bit biased, but this sure sounds like one of the easiest accidents to investigate. We can easily establish from the audio logs that the backup officers and paramedics were on scene by 15:03, so the officer began his investigation around that time. The officer stated that he didn't begin his conversations with me until about 15:33, some 30 minutes after he began the investigation. At that time, he claims he took my fully documented statement and signed it by me in 6 minutes, concluding at 15:40. Now, the 2 witness statements were not fully documented, but only summarized, and I'll come back to that. But for now, realize that a fully documented statement goes through an additional step of the officer transcribing the statement to an official document and reviewing of that by the witness. Because the summarizing doesn't require these additional steps, one would expect the statement without documenting to be a little quicker. And since my fully documented statement supposedly took 6 minutes, the 2 witness statements may have taken 12 minutes, leaving the proverbial 18-minute gap, so to speak, to fill. So I asked the chief, what were the other investigational duties that took up the 18 minutes to complete? The chief said he could have been doing many things, but answering would require him to speculate. Really? I guess the chief missed the Management 101, where they tell you the best way to figure out what someone was doing was to sit down with them and talk to them and review their work product. It is informative, I guess, to know that a detailed and thorough investigation doesn't involve actually talking to the officer, but only guessing. Of course, when a person at the top gives you "my dog ate my homework" answers, you know they're fully complicit. Reminds me of the mythical school field trip to cats. And the chief actually used the wrong verb. He needs to fabricate, not speculate. There's 18 minutes to fill before 15:33. That was really spent talking to me. And if 15:33 sounds familiar, it should. That's the time of the audio logs that were withheld from discovery. So we have way too much time before 15:33. Next time, we'll find out there's way too little time after 15:33.
Thank you, Mr. McGuigan. Stephanie Bias, Mary Maycor, and John Stein.
Good evening, Mayor Marchand, Vice Mayor Gary, and City Council members and staff. My name is Stephanie Bias. I've lived in Livermore many years. I'm here tonight because I was unable to attend the community planning workshop on July 14th. I too was on vacation. And I have 3 brief points. First, downtown Livermore's new buildings should aesthetically blend with the existing architecture. Classic elements in buildings that are welcoming and approachable from the street level. To me, this translates to a varied height design of up to 3 stories, not 5. I've never heard anyone mention what shadows are cast by 5-story buildings versus 3-story. Is anyone identifying, measuring, and reporting on shadows? Do we know how these out-of-scale buildings will affect the open public areas or restaurant patios? Who wants to sit on a cafe back patio on First Street and look up at 5 stories with a long shadow looming overhead? Second, by decreasing the amount of proposed housing in this plan and moving some of the proposed housing, perhaps to the Growth Brothers site, suddenly the area west of Livermore Avenue is a larger and more welcoming civic space for informal and formal community gatherings. Suddenly, this area has room for adequate driveways for buses to load, unload, and turn around without backing up traffic. And suddenly, this area has room for the hotel to be built there, west of Livermore Avenue, which will improve traffic flow, be aesthetically more scaled and balanced. My last point is that any new parking structure should be built underground. We know it's more expensive and well worth it. We know our future will not always be as car dependent as it is now. We can anticipate fewer personal cars, more buses, and shared cars that drop off visitors and then park away from the town center. The valuable ground above can be used for a park and more civic amenities. Thank you all for valuing public input and for taking your time to consider and plan our downtown. I'll see you at the next public meeting on Monday.
Thank you, Ms. Bias. Mary Maycor, John Stein, and Marcus Libkin.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Mary Maycor, and my job, I'm a tour director. I take people on vacations for a living. I have a hard job. Anyways, I've lived in Livermore for almost 35 years, and I've seen it really grow till I raised my family here. I have a proposed plan for downtown Livermore, and quite a few people have already mentioned their plan. My plan is to turn First Street into a promenade. Get rid of the traffic, put more businesses in there, make it more aesthetic, like everybody's talked about. I agree 100%. I've been thinking about this for the last couple years. When I take groups down to Santa Monica, they have 3rd Street Promenade right there. They've eliminated all traffic on that street. We have enough streets in Livermore to go around First Street. All you have to do is go South L to Livermore Avenue. Just take that little area and be surprised how many more businesses you can get in there, how much more money Livermore could make, city taxes. Now, as far as parking structures go, you have that big lot that everyone's been talking about here. Yes, you do need a parking structure there. But if you make a promenade over out on First Street in Livermore, you don't have to make that area behind it. You still have the beautiful part of First Street in Livermore to look at. And you can still make it beautiful in that way. Also, I'd like to be on the tourism board. Since I have over 11 years experience, I do know what I'm doing. And as far as making this city a great place, because I've read a lot of the other meetings, you want to make this a place for tourists to come and really appreciate it. You make that place a First Street Promenade, you're going to get a lot of people in here, because no other town around here has it except down in Santa Monica. Thank you.
Thank you very much. John Stein and Marcus Libkin.
Good evening, John Stein, 1334 Cathy Court. I guess you got a lot of input at the workshop. I was there, and the two major themes seem to be parking and open space. The parking issue is basically that parking is now at capacity for downtown, and you're adding new uses, 12,000 square feet of commercial, hotel, restaurant, meeting rooms, and there's not quite enough parking for the residential. The condominiums require 120 spaces plus visitor parking. The developer suggests 106 spaces with no visitor parking and says people can park on the street, but there's no place nearby to park on the street. So I would urge that you reinvestigate parking, perhaps complete the existing parking garage and extend it. There's also the problem of construction. While you're building the new parking structure, which is supposedly the first item, where will all the people who use that parking lot park? We're at capacity now. A significant portion of that parking lot will be used for construction. The other statement is that parking will be brought online as needed, but the need may occur, and it may take 2 or 3 years, even if you have the money to put in a structure. So it's sort of, by then, the uses will probably adjust, and some businesses will go out of business, and there will be less need for parking and a less vibrant downtown. The other issue is green space and open space, and I think people want actual open space, not walkways or sidewalks. There seems to be a consensus that there should be some squares or mini parks and a tot lot and water features and some large trees, not just planter boxes around the interior of the development. So I would urge that you consider I think a recommendation by Councilmember Gary a few meetings ago that you come up with a few alternatives and perhaps put it to a vote for the people to decide which one of the plans they really like. The other thing that would help is to have some sort of a economic analysis as to how this project affects the city's budget, both long-term and short-term. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. And Marcus Libkind.
My name is Marcus Libkind, and I moved to Livermore in 1975 to open a retail store and subsequently worked at both Sandia and Lawrence Livermore Lab. I've been very outspoken with letters to the editors, published saying that our downtown should focus on being a benefit to our residents. Bringing people from other places should be secondary. It's our land we should be benefiting. And that's actually why I was staunchly against the large 2,000-seat theater. It wasn't for the benefit of our residents. And I'm actually pleased to see where the planning's going now that the theater isn't being built. I'm willing to, not that I have any authority, to compromise on what I think would be good down there. I can live with taller buildings. But the one thing I can't live with is the lack of space for families to come and congregate downtown in this new area where there's some grass, hopefully water features. I can't help but think about when my daughter was young, and to go to a place like that, we used to go to San Ramon regularly because there wasn't anything in Livermore like that. Now, it's so obvious we need it. Look at Lizzie Fountain. You can attract lots more people by having shops, grass, water features, and in general, more space. You can still have the hotel, you can still have the conference center, you can still have apartments, but you need to focus on what will benefit the people of Livermore, not just bring in outside dollars. But like someone else has said, if you build something that's family-oriented, you will bring in a lot of other people. They will eat out. We have lots of restaurants. There'll be more restaurants. It'll be great. You just got to have the will to work longer to come up with something that's really the best. Thank you.
Mr. Libkin, thank you. Okay, thank you for your comments tonight. Moving on, and we're going to be covering a lot of this on August 1st, so look forward to additional input then. Moving on to the consent calendar. These are routine and typically acted by in one motion. So I don't have a speaker card for the consent calendar, but do I have a motion for the consent calendar? Does anybody wish to pull anything for comment? Motion?
So moved.
Vice Mayor Gary makes the motion, seconded by Councilmember Spadowski. The clerk will conduct a roll call and announce the results.
Okay. Councilmember Spadowski.
Aye.
Councilmember Turner.
Aye.
Councilmember Warner.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Gary.
Aye.
Mayor Marchand.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you very much. Moving on to public hearings. This is a hearing to receive protests related to the annual fire hazard abatement program. We have Ryan Rucker is going to be presenting the staff report, our fire marshal.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. I'm Ryan Rucker, Fire Marshal for the Livermore Pleasanton Fire Department. On March 14, 2016, the council adopted Resolution 2016-26, declaring existing conditions of growing weeds, accumulated refuge, rubbish, or dirt on private property, streets, parkways, sidewalks adjacent to each parcel or real property are a public nuisance and should be abated. On April 25, 2016, the council ordered the abatement of hazardous vegetation of the parcels identified in Exhibit A of the attached resolution and declared that the abatement costs, including administrative costs incurred by the city, are the responsibility of the property owner. A schedule has been provided to all property owners, which includes abatement timelines, types of work needed based on parcel type, as well as the administrative costs which are charged when the city performs the abatement. The fire department concluded hazardous vegetation abatement on 7 parcels in June of 2016 at a total cost of $4,377. Staff recommends that you consider any and all protests, and if the council finds it appropriate, adopt a resolution overruling protests, confirm the 2016 weed abatement assessments, and direct staff to forward a certified copy of the assessment report to the county auditor. Staff's available for questions.
Any questions? Okay, I have no speaker cards. I'm going to open the public hearing. Okay, seeing no speaker cards, no public comment, no protests, I'm going to close the public hearing. At that point, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Councilmember Warner, seconded by Vice Mayor Gary. Any comments on the motion? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Spadovsky?
Aye.
Councilmember Turner?
Aye.
Councilmember Warner?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Gary?
Aye.
Mayor Marchand?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Matters for consideration. Ballot measure to preserve the open space designation in the general plan for the Springtown Golf Course. Welcome back, Mr. City Attorney.
Thank you. Good evening. Jason Alcala, your city attorney. What you have before you this evening is the ballot measure you requested us to prepare. We presented to you back in June 13th with a slight amendment. We're actually recommending the incorporation of 4 additional parcels along the Arroyo. They're considered part of the golf course as well. What the action before you this evening is to approve this ballot measure, adopt the resolution to send it to election on November 8th. You've already taken action on your primary argument, and that'll go forward shortly after that. The other item we're asking for direction from you this evening is if there is a primary argument presented in opposition to this initiative, if you as a council would like to take the opportunity to prepare a rebuttal argument. If that would be the case, I would recommend you again figure out how you'd like to proceed with that. One way to do that is to appoint the subcommittee or reappoint that subcommittee to prepare the argument, and either they can sign that or you can have them present it to the entire council to sign and place on the ballot. With that, we're available for questions.
Okay, any questions? Okay, very good. With that, I have 3 cards for public comment. I'll take public comment. We have Mary Maycor, Connie Copps, and Bruce Anderson. Your opportunity to speak.
Hi, it's just me again, Mary Maycor. I've been kind of gone for a while because of my job, and so I wasn't really sure what the whole thing was going on there with the open space. I just wanted to make sure that no buildings were going to be built there, and I guess that's not going to happen now, because that's really good, because our water is precious to us. The more houses we build here, less water we all get, and I just wanted to say that. That's basically all I had to say about it, so I'm glad that's not happening. Thank you.
Okay, she talked about water. I'm sorry. I'll wait till after the hearing. Okay. Okay, Mayor, Connie Copps and Bruce Anderson.
So I haven't really looked at the parcels that were added to it, but I do have concerns about that whole ballot initiative, and I think that they're, by putting it on the initiative or putting it on the ballot, you're going to allow people to vote no on it. And it seems to me that there was a larger parcel. There was more to the golf course than was listed in the original parcels. And now I know the park's the lead agencies to decide the future of it. And they're still claiming the city, the 939 Larkspur, which is really the HOA property. The HOA, when they talk about the future of Springtown and that, there's a handful of people really taking charge and maybe not communicating well, with their intentions. And if you ask 20 different people in Springtown about the land use in the whole North Livermore area and how this golf course came to be, you'll get 20 different answers. And if you're going to put anything on the ballot, I want to make sure that everybody up here and everybody there is on the same page with the facts, that they've, looked over them with a fine-tooth comb, and that you've listened to your community. I really suggest a study group where people get together and they show what they see or perceive as the facts on how the land is zoned and what the whole deal was in the first place. And I would hope that there would be consensus, because really what was brought up at the meetings when you decided you didn't want the golf course anymore to operate it, the city planners were actually very much contradicting what the newspaper articles say in the old microfiche archive newspapers. The year's wrong. A lot of facts are, could really be attacked. And then also, I heard on the radio that surplus land that any city owns under the Obama administration, that they really want and sort of expect that surplus land be developed, for our housing shortage. And I have strong feelings that I don't want that developed. I don't know how it's considered surplus land, but I also know that things kind of are getting ugly with the HOA. I've been accused of threatening our office manager, which I don't threaten people. I know that we can solve this out through talking and figuring and discussing things, but I'm really on edge, because I think how we got to this point could have been a lot more transparent, and it could have answered a lot more questions factually. I encourage you to look at the videos that I did take of a public meeting that was held at the Elks. There were 2 back-to-back, and that particular one was not even in the paper, but people showed up, so it's a short one. But please, 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 please be transparent, do the right thing, do what is right, and do what is good, and think about, the consequences of, putting it on the ballot. And yes, if there's people that are complaining that maybe people could vote it to change, that would be wrong, I think. So put a rebuttal and keep it off until you know what really is right and good from the past to the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Copps. Bruce Anderson.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council, and staff. This one's going to be short and sweet. I'd just like to support the staff recommendation of 601. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Okay, that's it for the cards. So I'm going to close that comment period. Just a quick point on Ms. Maycor's point about the water. We don't have our own water supply here in Livermore. We actually, we're state water project contractors, so we buy our water from the state. So we're in the process of building a certain number of homes in Livermore. I think we've got a few hundred right now in construction. But we share our water with a pool, the entire state water project. And over the last 2 years, in each of those last 2 years, within the state of California, there have been issued 90,000 building permits. And all of those 90,000 building permits are also in the same queue, getting the same water that we are. So whether we build the couple hundred housing units that we're building here really is irrelevant when it's talking about the 90,000 connections in the state. So what we really need to do is to have the state commit to completing the state water project and living up to their commitments and fulfilling their contracts, because that's going to be the absolute key to providing water for this region. As far as transparency, this is why we're putting this to a vote. We want to make sure that this land remains open space so that no future council can come back and change that designation, because we've heard loud and clear that the community does not want building. They don't want housing on those former golf course lands. And I think that as this moves on, and the Park District being the lead agency on this study, I think this has the opportunity to be a tremendous attraction and resource for the community up there. I found it hard to believe that I heard people saying that, oh, we got enough parks up in Springtown. And I think we just heard a few people talking recently about how we need more gathering spaces. And I think that this really has an opportunity to be a wonderful resource for the Springtown community. And this is why we wanted to put it to a vote of the people, so that, again, no future council can change that it will stay what the people have said they want. They want it to remain open space, and working with the Park District, I think this is going to be a tremendous opportunity for that community. So, other comments for the council? Anybody? Okay, in that case, do I have a motion?
Actually, I do have one comment.
Oh, yes.
Let
me back up as far as the
slow tonight, and I don't know
slogan.
I don't know about our fifth council member, which I'm still getting used to looking at the video card and seeing a telepresent council member. I just want to thank everybody going back now, 7, 8 months, 10 months that's provided input. I'd like to thank a lot of the more recent inputs. Staff for tonight's agenda, clarified the exact parcel and boundaries of the open space. A comment was made tonight, well, what if people vote no? Well, that's what democracy is about. We're asking the question. We think we heard a plurality of voices say, lock in no building, so we're asking the public to put their shoulder to that wheel and agree with the 5 of us. No building on the open space. I'm willing to take that risk. I think this community knows what it wants, and let's move forward. And I appreciate staff's attention to detail and honing in on getting the final documentation exact.
Councilmember Warner?
Okay, as long as we're going for comments. I think what's very important here is I don't think there's much risk that anybody would vote no. But as we mentioned in the last meeting on this, there have been several instances throughout the state, because of the pressure on golf courses, where developers are coming in and want to develop them. And it's a pretty ugly battle in some communities. And so this is our opportunity to just tell those that have designs on that area it's not going to happen.
Also, do we need to decide about the rebuttal?
That's what I was going to. I was going to make that comment, yeah. I would suggest that as part of the motion that we would. You guys did a great job, and I would just reappoint the committee that wrote the initial argument if we need to write a rebuttal. So I would just support that.
But also, I wanted to make one comment that I know certain members of the Springtown HOA really tried to come up with creative ways to fill that funding gap, and I do appreciate their work, although. Not all of them were valid, and some of them, were very creative. But there were a lot of people that cared and really tried this time to figure out some way to keep things going. It just didn't pan out. So I just wanted to make sure that they were recognized as well.
There's been a lot of effort on this for the last 9 years, certainly, and certainly appreciate everybody's efforts all the way along. Councilmember Turner, any comments that you wish to make?
Just echoing what everybody else has said, I think this has been a long time coming. I love putting it into the hands of the voters, and if a rebuttal is needed, I am absolutely in support of what you said, Mayor Marchand, that the committee did a great job on the original agreement. If we need a rebuttal agreement, certainly I'm in support of that as well. And this certainly puts it to the people and allows for protection of this open space. So thank you again to the committee for putting this argument together.
Okay, very good.
So suggest she make the motion.
Oh, there we go. That way it ensures that you're here. So, Councilmember Turner.
I so move.
Okay, so.
With the recommendation that if we need a rebuttal argument, that we use the same process that we used for this argument.
Okay, Councilmember Turner's made the motion. The city attorney's looking at me.
I would just make. Councilwoman Turner, just on that one, the subcommittee actually returned to the council to present the argument to be approved by the council as a whole. Yes. You will not have that opportunity here. So I would request that you either direct the subcommittee to prepare it and sign on behalf of the council. That would be one recommendation. The other one be that they prepare it and it's signed by all of you as well. It can be either way. So if you follow the same process you did last time.
Absolutely, that's what I meant.
Yeah, very good. So what I heard is that to recapitulate, the direction would be for the subcommittee to prepare the argument and sign on behalf of the council.
Absolutely.
Very good.
Works for me, providing there's a need for a rebuttal.
Correct.
Okay, so with that, seconded by Councilmember Warner. Any discussion on that motion? Roll call, please.
Okay, Councilmember Spadowski.
Aye.
Councilmember Turner.
Aye.
Councilmember Warner.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Gary.
Aye.
Mayor Marchand.
Aye.
Motion carried 5-0.
6.02, discussion and direction regarding agreements and related approvals for improvement area number 2, the Community Facilities District, El Charro and Crosswinds Church.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. My name is Doug Alessio. I'm your Administrative Services Director. The item before you tonight it has to do with the development of the El Charro Specific Plan Area. As you're aware, when the El Charro Specific Plan Area was developed, it relied upon construction over $40 million of infrastructure. The finance structure assumed that a portion of the monies would be paid for from land-secured financing. If you recall, the city decided to move forward with that project during the depths of the recession. During that time, there was a bit of a credit crunch going on where it was hard to borrow money. So the city stepped in and issued a certificate of participation, relying on the good credit of the city's general fund in order to get the project moving. Each of the improvement areas within the El Charro Specific Plan Area have development agreements which require, have certain triggers in them that require that funding be replaced. As you recall, that funding was replaced with Phase 1 and Phase 2 of the outlet malls, and the shops development also has this structure in place but hasn't funded it yet. So the item before you tonight is the Crosswinds Church improvement area is have hit their trigger in their development agreement requiring them to replace the city COP. So the item before you would be to issue a private placement bond that one of their parishioners will be buying. It requires 4/5 vote from council because the assessed value currently on the parcel for the 14-15 year was only $5 million, and Melaloose law and the city policy requires 3 times the value. Otherwise, 4/5 votes required. The assessed value that's on the property is not reflective of the improvements that the church has already built, nor the improvements that we expect them to build in the future. If you approve this, we'll issue a bond. The city's financing that it put up in the first place will come back to us, and we'll be able to use that money to help for the construction of the downtown parking facility or the council chamber / meeting hall. So if you have any questions that I can't answer tonight, Chris Lynch from Jones Hall is our bond counsel. He's here in the audience. So I have help in case you guys have staff questions tonight.
All right. Thank you. Any questions for staff? Okay. Very good. With that, I would entertain a motion for 6.02.
I'll move 6.02.
Okay. Councilmember Turner, disembodied voice there.
Yeah.
Okay. Motion made by Councilmember Turner.
Second.
Seconded by Vice Mayor Gary. Any discussion on the motion?
No, one compliment. Again, one of the original staff members is in the audience. I think we both had completely dark hair when we first met. 15-ish years ago, this institution has been pursuing their dream to develop the congregation on this site. And I don't know if this is your final legal move, but probably almost, if not. So congratulations again for your hard work all these decades.
And it's not the original site. That
Close enough.
Yeah. Okay, with that, any more discussion on the motion? All in favor? Roll call.
Okay. Councilmember Spadowski.
Aye.
Councilmember Turner.
Aye.
Councilmember Warner.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Gary.
Aye.
Mayor Marchand.
Aye.
Motion carried 5-0 vote.
Okay, selection of voting alternates for the League of California Cities annual conference. So it's my suggestion that I would be the designated voting delegate, but I would ask that Councilmember Turner, if you're going to be going to the League of California Cities, that you would be willing to be the alternate.
Yeah, I'll be there, and absolutely.
Okay, terrific. Agreeable to the council? Okay, and it's simply by direction. Okay. And moving on to 6.04, discussion and direction regarding the residential recycled water program. Mr. Greenwood.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. I'm Darren Greenwood, your Public Works Director. Item 6.04 is an update on the residential recycled water program. As you're aware, over the last 2 years, the city has distributed recycled water to residents from the wastewater treatment plant. The program was originally intended to supplement potable water landscaping during the drought to keep ornamental shrubs, important landscaping alive during the drought, during limited watering days that we had. During the last year of the program, we informed residents that if there were no mandatory conservation measures in place during 2016, we would probably not offer the program. Although it was successful in providing water to residents to keep their landscaping alive, it was only moderately effective as a conservation measure. So in May of this year, we notified all the permittees. We had over 900 in 2015. We notified them that if the state didn't have mandatory conservation requirements, we would stop the program this year. In early May, we sent out an email to all 900 participants. On May 18th, the state updated their emergency regulation that returned some local control to water districts. Zone 7, on behalf of the Tri-Valley, analyzed the water supply based on the criteria that the state put forward and found that even assuming 3 more dry years at current demands, there would be sufficient water to meet the needs without mandatory conservation. So at that time, Zone 7 adopted a 10% voluntary with the consensus of all the water retailers in the valley. The city's come back and adjusted our percentage to 10% voluntary as well. After that action, we informed the recycled water permittees that we would be stopping the program this year. On July 11th, Council asked staff to bring back an update and a report looking at the program and to try and develop alternatives to implement the program in a more cost-effective manner, because the requirements of the program mandate that the city issue permits, observe the fill stations, and inspect the use sites. So it's pretty staff time intensive. So based on Council's direction, staff went back and looked at how we could do the program more cheaply if we were to get it back into operation, and how to reduce the subsidy by non-participants. And what we found was if we minimize permanent staff involvement and bring in temporary staff and run an abbreviated program. The other problem is where the fill stations are located at the treatment plant. We will need that area at the end of September for a laydown area for a construction project that's coming. So if we were to restart the program this year, it would only be about a 60-day window in August and September, hopefully the hottest parts of the year. But based on that and the use of temporary staff, we estimate, and actually less participants, because without the mandatory conservation, some people would still come, but not as many as we had. So making those assumptions, staff believes we can run the program for about $29,000. To look at minimizing the subsidy, staff proposed a permit fee, a flat permit fee, rather than a fee based on the amount of water, because tracking and billing based on that would just increase the administrative costs. So if you divided the number of participants by, or the expected participants by the cost, it'd be about $100 permit fee, but that seems a little excessive. So if we tried to target recovering about half the cost, it would come up with a permit fee of about $50. So staff is available for any questions.
Questions for staff? Councilman Warner?
Yeah, I've got one. It's kind of minor, but you put in the cost of the water, but if it's not picked up, then we kind of pay to ship it out of here, right?
Correct. There is a cost to pump the water over the hill.
So just minor. I would, in computing the cost, I wouldn't put a price of the water in it.
Fine. The only difference there is the cost to pump the water over a hill is much less than to treat it to recycled standards. So it is more expensive to produce the water that we sell as well.
Yeah, but I mean, if you really push me on it, you should give people a credit for avoiding the cost of pumping it. So, but I'm just saying, let's not get the water cost into this.
I'm also thinking the administrative cost of collecting the $50 and processing all that would probably almost exceed the cost of the fee that we're getting. So it's just probably no pun intended, but just a wash as well. So.
True. We were trying to come up with some way to minimize the subsidy, but yes, there would be a cost to collect it.
So one thing I would want to, this is open for discussions. Questions.
We've got a couple cards. Oh. So if you want to take public comment first. Okay, public comment. Eric Carlson, Bruce Anderson. Mr. Carlson.
Good evening, Mayor Marchand and council members. Thank you for asking staff to review the program since it was curtailed in May. I think a lot of us who took advantage of the water at the treatment plant really benefited, even though certainly I can appreciate the cost far exceeded the benefit if you look at just simply the cost per gallon. It's never going to be a win-win with potable water being the comparison. But again, really appreciate that staff put some energy into reviewing some alternatives. And I think the bottom line is that whether we are confronted with mandatory water rationing at 10% or 20% or whatever the number may be, if the drought continues or we have cycles with drought, the use of the recycled water for irrigation and landscaping is truly a benefit, and it does offset the potable water costs and distribution for a precious resource, and we have it. So that's the beauty. The infrastructure is already built. The comment I think that I'm personally appreciate is that the staff is flexible on the pricing, or suggesting that the council considers a pricing for the permit, understanding all the administrative costs and the cost to administer the program outside with the pumping stations, or the filling stations, I should say, is certainly fixed based on the number of hours that it ultimately becomes open. And Darren didn't identify how many hours per week or days of the week that $29,000 figure would entail, but I'm assuming the hours would be flexible, and some off-peak hours when residents are coming home from work, or maybe a little bit later in the evening, start at noon, that kind of thing, and maybe run to a little bit later hour in the evening, to offer it so that folks will try and take advantage of it. Personally, I think something around the $50 mark for a permit is very justifiable. I think it's fair for only Livermore residents who literally live within the city limits should be participants. Those people have Livermore addresses but live in the county area, are not paying for sewer connections. Generally, there are some, I know, exceptions. But I don't think it's fair to the folks that live within the city that are being assessed a sewer fee on their property taxes should bear the brunt of folks that live outside of the city. So again, I encourage the council to restart the program and come up with a permit fee for the residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carlson. Mr. Anderson.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council, and staff. Thank you very much for bringing this up. I just learned about this afternoon via Nextdoor, which is another interesting thing. But it's a little bit interesting. On the freeways now, we're seeing signs put up on the lit saying that we're in a drought, conserve water. I want to say roughly 6 weeks ago, I was traveling northbound on Vasco near Patterson Pass Road, and our fire department was cutting up a tall tree that had fallen into the street, covering up both the southbound lanes of Vasco. Tree died, and this was easily, I'll say, a 30-foot tree. Walking north on Vasco near Augusta, I'll say, a friend and I, the same friend from the golf course, but that's another story, with about a 4-inch in diameter branch has just snapped, and it's up against the sound wall against the homes there. I mean, it just snapped. The trees are dead. Now we have the smoke in the valley, la-di-da. I have been picking up water when I'm over in the Pleasanton side of the valley, if I can mix it in the same way I did when I was in Livermore. God forbid, not God forbid, I live in northeast Livermore, and there's no grocery deals over there, so I go over here to where I've been shopping for 25 years, the Nob Hill, and on the way back, I'd pick up water. I'm carpooling it, sort of thing. But at any rate, and then I learned, hey, I see purple fire hydrants on Greenville, and you correct me that that's Alameda County water instead of Livermore water, unfortunately. And when I was discussing this with somebody in the city, it turned out that, yes, the water that we were receiving to water our plants it did cost more to then the water to go to San Francisco Bay. However, it was a nominally kind of smaller dollar value against, you know, like a hectare of water or acre foot of water or something like that. And when you divided that in, I mean, it was a kind of a negligible amount. But anyway, at any rate, I would propose that you please reinstate the program. I only have about 160 gallons of rainwater left, and I see people putting in plastic lawns, and the plastic lawns, for me, that's just putting more heat into the atmosphere, and it's not putting more moisture into the atmosphere. And I think that I want to say I did talk to a couple of my neighbors, and I just say, you know, you got to balance the cost versus the conscience. We're trying to do what's right. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Okay, that's the cards that I've got. Discussion from the council. Councilman Warner.
Well, I'll just say a couple of things. I think that the amount that we just talked about earlier is not huge, and I think what I've heard from
you're done. Next.
You're done. Well, that works. Okay, just as long as the rest of you follow that time, especially when it comes to talking about water, right? So the
that hurt me.
He's got the secret buzzer. So what I was saying is that I think this is, here are my thoughts on this, and it's just, we'll have further discussion. But the amount of money is not large, but what I have heard from the staff in the past is we're getting into something and we're worried about the precedent. And that there are significant, we did a full season, possibly significant administrative costs. So we're not talking about the cost of the water, we're talking about the cost of labor. And what we're always dealing with, especially with the recession and everything else, is we've been very careful of not having extra labor, and we look at every piece. So I've heard that loud and clear from the staff. They've done a great job over the years and everything else. So what the suggestion I would have is that this year's, kind of, we're getting started later. We're not talking a lot of money. We are talking about the principle, though, of trying to defray some of the costs so this doesn't get out of hand in the future. So what I would recommend is that there's the principle that we try and do is at least recover half of the administrative costs for this. And that we're not trying to be perfect about it, but that's roughly the number. And that in any year in which there's mandatory rationing, that fee for the permit would be suspended. And that's kind of where I would be at it. And for this year, we're talking, nominally $50. It's not a big deal. And given that it's a partial year and everything else, I'm okay with forgetting it this year if we reestablish the program, but that we don't lose sight of the principle that we're going to go for recovering half of the administrative costs. I think that's a reasonable compromise. So that's where I'm coming out.
Okay. Vice Mayor, comments?
Yeah, I said quite a bit last time. I'll be more succinct this time. And the last speaker, I think, said it well. It's balancing the ecology, and even, yes, we know the recycled water isn't good for every living specimen. But it's not about the cost. It's about sending a continuous conservation message, and how many people even are spurred to conserve because they see their neighbor going to the effort and the cost of using reclaimed water. I think there's still a lot to learn about how to do this. I think we're not by any means, as a region, out of a drought. I don't agree with the state's total lifting of the restrictions. You can just look at a whole lot of current climate data that says we got lucky with half a decent snowpack one year. I'd like us to continue this innovation and experimentation. I really like the idea of not just recovering half the fee this year, but look down the road, being perhaps flexible depending on the severity of conservation. I'd like staff on the permit fee, just another suggestion, maybe you do this anyways, collect an email address from the applicant. And how about at the end of the program, do a short web-based survey. Get some feedback from the actual users. Why are you doing this? What could the city do to make it more beneficial? The other point I heard tonight that I totally agree with is the sewer ratepayers ultimately flush and pay for reclaimed water. It's where it comes from. And it ought to be, we can easily do it or consider restricting it without us playing lawyer tonight. That's for staff to consider, but if we can restrict it, restrict it. I know we heard, at least anecdotally, I heard a lot last year about people making a cottage business out of reselling what they were getting for free to their neighbors. And that's not my intent in restarting and continuing to experiment, innovate. It's a homeowner trying to do the right thing in their mind by conserving using recycled water. And if they do it for themselves and maybe their elderly parent or in-law, I'm okay with that. But establishing a business and somebody hauling a tank a day to then go charge and resell it, I don't know if that meets our civic needs either. Thanks.
Councilor Spadowski?
Sure. First, a question for staff. So 9-week, 29K, roughly. So in a 25-week period, if we do this again next year, would that be roughly 80K? If it wasn't, somewhere around there. So about that. Yeah, I think I'm better with this amount. I had initial sticker shock after the first year when we said, okay, how much did it cost? And there was a lot of startup costs. And I had one other idea, and I'll see if Darren's face sours with this as I say it. And if it does, I'll just cut myself off because I know. Yeah, and I'd like to throw out this suggestion. Just thought of it now, so yeah, here we go. Instead of a fee, if people were to reimburse for the cost of a sign and zip tie that to their tanks, their water tank, I would be willing to waive the fee as long as it was, or lower the fee to the price of a sign that promotes water conservation. Because here's where I'm going, and now this is why I'm more comfortable with a 30 or 80K range. The amount of public outreach that we get from mentioning this program, just from people driving around with the tanks, and you look and you see that it's a recycled water sticker on it. Every time I see that when I'm stuck in traffic, I start thinking about the drought and recycled water. It's advertisement. We don't have billboards here. We don't have a lot of public outreach tools that are traditionally associated with media campaigns, and you really cannot buy this amount of public outreach for 80K. If you had a sign somehow, one of the corrugated plastic ones, maybe we change it up each year. I know this could be maybe rolled into the cost, so Darren's face hasn't completely exploded at this point, so I think it might be doable, but I'd like to make that suggestion because I really want to turn this into an opportunity to reach out to those that are stuck in traffic, as we all are, and we're working on, so you're not stuck in traffic, but yeah, just throwing that idea out there as well.
So you want the city to produce these signs?
If maybe to provide some, I know we have all of those. This lawn is recycled, or it's watered by recycled water, that kind of. Even if it's just that sign, you zip tie it to your tank. And I know not everybody has the same type of tank, but if it's displayed some way on the tank securely, I don't know if we want to change the message up every few years to keep. Oh, there's an eye roll. Maybe not, but just some way to kind of offset. I'd be willing to waive that fee if they attach a sign, or at least lower it so we're reimbursed for the sign because you can get them, once everything's designed and all that. So anyway,
Just a clarification. Under the use rules anyway, all the tanks are required to be placarded anyway. So they should all have signs on them.
It's got that little purple sticker.
Yeah. So to replace that with a bigger one that gets a little more advertising, if they're paying for that or a permit fee, it's not that much difference.
Yeah.
Although the people that have current signs, it's no cost for them to keep using if we switch up a new sign. But if they're paying for it, it doesn't really matter.
Or if we want to put a bigger sign and say you can have a reduced fee, then here you go. If they want to do it, so, yeah.
Mr. City Attorney, just a quick comment about contrasting free speech and forced signage and any issues on that?
It's something the federal government does quite regularly. It's a condition of participation. If you set your program up to require that as part of your
ability to receive your permit, you have to have signage, you could do that.
Okay, all right.
Well, it's better than a scarlet letter or something, right?
Or it's better than that sticker that they make you put on new cars that says, chemicals known to cause cancer. It's right in your blind spot, too. So it's, more dangerous than that.
And Mr. Mayor, if you actually wanted to completely insulate yourself, give the participants the option of either paying the full permit fee or taking the sign again.
There we go.
That's what I was trying to articulate.
I love that idea. Thank you, Stephen. And just to build on it, do what the city attorney just suggested this year, either or, simple sign. But how about, again, in terms of ecology and conservation, could we have a middle school contest this fall, middle school science classes or whatever, in a water module? Can you come up with a slogan and maybe a critter, a cute little thing, a branding thing, and next year's sign is I'm conserving, too, or, Willie Water says conserve, I don't know, just have some fun with it, engage the youth.
Isn't May
you get a lot of creative minds on it, who knows what they'll come up with.
Isn't May Water Month, Darren? Yeah, so we can have that as part of Water Month.
There you go.
In theory, we could roll this into the poster contest if that's your wish.
Well, I'm just saying, I want to give staff the ability to brainstorm and run with the idea of spreading the conservation message literally with these vehicles.
Okay. Councilmember Turner, comments?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in support of the majority of what you guys are talking about. However, I do have some big concerns, and I want to make sure that we're sending the right message. The climatologists at the lab predict that our climate is absolutely changing. And 10 to 20 years from now, our climate's going to look like Arizona in Livermore. And so the message really needs to be altering landscape, not sustaining the same exact landscape that we have now. And so finding a way to ensure that we're sending that message. Yes, we want to use recycled water to keep existing things alive, but we really need to be looking at changing the landscape in town as well, and pushing forward with that. And as far as Councilmember Warner's suggestion that we don't charge the permit fee in times where there's mandatory recycling, I think we should come back and discuss that further, because I think when there's mandatory recycling, that's probably when I don't know, we might need to charge it even more at that point, because that's when we're really limited on water. And but that's a discussion for another day. I can support this for this summer, but I think we really need to look at our long-term water needs, looking at the potential over the next 10 to 20 years that we just aren't gonna, that we're gonna continue to be less and less, have less and less rainfall in this area, and really come up with methods to convert landscape.
Okay, so recognize where we've gotten, looks like there's a fair consensus up here on finding a way to come up with a plan, reasonable cost, reasonable fee or signage, and to find a way to make this work using temporary staff. Is that kind of where we're going on this?
Give me just one more hint here,
okay.
Because on the is there consensus on essentially that although we can come up with a fee, that for this limited duration program, that this year there will not be a fee? Is that the direction consensus of the council?
Yeah, but just make it clear that
we're getting a great deal this year.
We're not collecting this year, but the intent is going
very
forward.
good.
But perhaps, and in lieu, get a sign-up card, get a contact. Maybe you just decide midwinter you want to do a fee survey, do some kind of regulatory thing. I just think you've got some committed users out there who really ramped up. We cut them off really quick. We're allowing them to ease back in. They're just a knowledge base that we ought to take advantage of if and when we need to. That's all.
I think you mentioned that we do have email addresses for them. Yeah, okay. So, good. And I really liked Mr. Anderson's comment about balancing between cost and conscience. I think that was very well put. So, thank you. So, is that sufficient direction for staff?
Yes.
Okay.
If I could just say one thing, I'd like Councilmember Turner's suggestion about let's think this through in even a larger part. So the combination of what Vice Mayor Gary was talking about and Councilman Turner is that this year let's collect information, let's do some thinking, and we were kind of up and down real fast, and people couldn't really respond as quickly, or we weren't responding to the situation. So let's just take this time, and next year we'll figure it out.
Okay.
And thank you, Councilwoman Turner. Another idea, we could also use it to incentivize the removal of unnecessary lawn. A lot of us participated, I know I did, in the Cal Water rebate program and removed a lot of turf over the last year. And maybe there's other incentivizing things we can come up with to further harden the landscape need for water, if you have the right plants, if you can take recycled continually, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's some of the other over the winter time brainstorming staff could put in when we look at next year's program. Is maybe it's an incentivizer to participate at all. We're not just going to encourage climate adverse behavior,
but make sure we preserve the trees.
Those trees that can take it.
Yeah, take off the turf, but preserve the trees.
Preserve trees.
Okay, sufficient? Okay, we don't need. Do we need a roll call for this? No. Okay, so we're pass on that. Okay, then moving ahead to 7.01, the council reports and matters initiated. Councilor Spadowski.
Sure. Just a few items to report. On July 13th, we had the advisory body committee interviews. Again, a lot of great applicants. Those that did not make it, please apply again. It's always a tough choice. On July 18th, we had the Tri-Valley Transportation Committee meeting where we authorized an audit service agreement for audit services for the next several years. And also I was elected chair of the Tri-Valley Transportation Committee for the next 2 years. Thank you. I think it's rotation, so yeah, there you go. It's fixed. I'm a warm body with a pulse. On July 19th, I attended Tuesday Tunes, Evenings on the Green. It seems like that name changes. It was a great jazz band, Secret Tattoo, and there were so many people in front of the Bankhead Theater playing Pokemon Go. It was absolute. My daughter and I were out there 45 minutes later than we intended to because there were so many people and we were playing it. But I wanted to bring that up because I also wanted to thank the library for sponsoring events for the game that's taking over everything by storm. I think it's great because it also gives parents the opportunity to show up to the library and figure out what the heck is my kid doing and how can I make sure that they're being safe. And I think it was today there was an event. I couldn't make it because of work, but that would have been very interesting. So thank you for putting on those events. That's it.
Very good. Thank you. Councilmember Warner? Oh, okay, so Councilmember Turner. That's right. We go down the rotation here. Councilmember Turner.
The empty chair. So I have nothing significant to report because I've been out of the country since the last meeting. But it has been quite interesting, and as we talk about water and the communities here, South Africa suffering a very severe drought. The national parks are looking at not having enough water for the animals. And I've been in communities where you walk into a restaurant and they're like, sorry, we're closed, we're out of water. And so seeing what a water true drought can really do has opened my eyes to certainly the need for us to really look at what we're doing with our water policy. And I know, Mayor, you've been working a lot with that. And so it'll be interesting when I come back and we can have some discussions. But I certainly, like I said, really want to look at programs and maybe over the fall, the winter, where we can incentivize people to reduce or remove their turf. Stop Waste has a grant. We've got the Cal Water, but really connecting all of that together so that we can get people, hopefully, to get more water-friendly yards and really looking at what we're going to do to sustain our water supply in the long term, I think would be great. And I just wanted to give a thank you to Neil Snedecor and all of the staff who worked to make it possible for me to attend this meeting remotely, and for your patience. And I know it's a little more tricky doing this, so thank you all for supporting this so that I could attend tonight's meeting.
Very good. Thank you. And this is certainly going to be something that we continue to address on the Water Roundtable. That's our regional work group on that. Councilmember Warner.
A couple of things this time. First of all, I very much enjoyed participating on the advisory body interviews. It's done that in the past, and it's always great to see the people who want to come out and volunteer and contribute to the community, and really want to thank everybody who showed up and encourage others to apply, because I think there are wonderful opportunities there. So that enjoyed that. I went to the introduction to the downtown specific plan workshop. I wanted to see what, get a feel for what the community was doing, what they were thinking. Wanted to see how the materials were presented. I've got, if I may, a question for staff, just to be clear on the next one was the joint meeting with the Planning Commission. I've read the articles in the paper and heard some feedback on the downtown specific plan. Is it the intent that on that meeting with the Planning Commission that we give direction as to what we've heard in terms of the number of units, the amount of open space? Are we to be pretty specific in our guidance at that point, or what's the plan?
Well, you're trying to skip ahead to staff's recommendation at this particular point, and we haven't published that there, but we'll give you a little bit of a sneak peek into some of that. Is certainly the council is well within its legal authority to give as definitive a direction as it wishes to give. You have a notice to meeting, you have an item on the agenda, so all of those items are clearly on the table. Staff believes that based on the community feedback we received there, that what might be most useful as a next step is to gather some additional information to provide a little more data on some of these points. We've heard some real key points. You heard them again tonight. Traffic, parking, open space, economics, all seem like areas that are quite fundamental to people's beliefs about the project and what might actually be willing to move forward. You'll have your agendas out essentially late this week. It's a single item, and so it's a fairly straightforward item. The big part of it is the attachment, because you will have a lot of stuff attached to it with all of those comments. But I don't think any of those would shock any of you as far as the themes that we heard about concerns and wanting to have more information and more assurances that some of these issues will be properly addressed.
So we should come prepared to that meeting having thought about the themes and how to best understand what the community is after. And I just want to continue to encourage the community to participate, because I think it's wonderful and we need to do that. So, and then the final thing I'll mention is I went to the Altamonte Landfill Open Space Committee. And just for everyone to know that's where the money is coming in from the tipping fees to mitigate the impact of the landfill. And the idea is to put money toward preserve open space. So one of the things that was talked about in the last one was we've got a lot of money building up. It's like $12 million on the east side. We don't have as many parcels identified. So we want to be more, it was reported in the paper, be more aggressive in trying to come up with that. The first, with appropriate parcels, the first step, I believe, and I was the advocate of, is let's just clarify the criteria so that we know what we're all clear on. There's some criteria specified in the agreement, but we want to be, but that's not proscriptive as to everything, so we can be broader about that. So we're going to clarify the criteria. The second thing is we heard a presentation on the area known as the Tesla Park, and that one of the things that will be on the agenda for the next meeting is considering designating that area as a priority open space acquisition area should it become available. Not to say that it will be, but that it would be designated, and that's what I have to report. And well, I guess I should mention that if that were to happen, that you have to have first the receiving organization that would want to run it. And second of all, which I think is not really a problem from what I understand, the second one is, should that open space committee vote to designate it as a priority, then that would come back to the respective city councils to be affirmed.
Very good. Thank you. Councilmember Gary. Vice Mayor Gary.
Just Or hey, you.
Yeah, Vice Mayor Gary, there you go.
Just one meeting to report. Attended as our representative the Downtown Association monthly executive board meeting, where another lively discussion was had by all over the various aspects of the downtown plan and the community meeting. And I know a whole lot of people with a variety of interests are looking forward to our next collaborative discussion.
And on July 13th, I attended actually one of my favorite acronyms is ARG, the Altamonte Regional Rail Working Group. And we talked about the extension that Valley Transit Authority did for that they're moving through into Santa Clara, and it's about a year ahead of schedule and about $75 million under budget. That's because they're doing the project. They've actually taken it away from BART and been able to streamline the effort. Also, the same day was the Alameda County Mayor's Conference. And the next day was the Local Agency Formation Commission, where we discussed the Eden Healthcare District and undertaking a special study on their sphere of influence. There's been some discussion between the cities of Hayward, San Leandro, and also Alameda County to dissolve the Eden Healthcare District. So there's actually state legislation that's being proposed. We also talked about extensions of service in Pleasanton and Happy Valley. The same day we had the National Night Out kickoff. The National Night Out is going to be on August 2nd. This is part of the Neighborhood Watch program. It's getting everybody to encourage them to meet their neighbors and look out for one another. It's a great event, so if you haven't already signed up, sign up. It's August 2nd coming up. And so next we are going to adjourn to a special meeting between the City Council and the Planning Commission, August 1st, 7 p.m., Robert Livermore Community Center in the Cresta Blanca Room, 4444 East Avenue. And then after that, we'll be reconvening in a regular City Council meeting September 12th. 2016 at 7 p.m. right back here in our triple-wide trailer. And so it looks like we almost get to take the month of August off. The regular council meeting for August 8th has been canceled. So with that, meeting adjourned.